for a couple of hours this evening, and we want you to get involved. We want you to sit down, and we want you to call your neighbors and get your children around, because we want to try to really see if we can get deep down into what we feel is the next step for us as a community. But we're going to talk on blacks and being outspoken in society and how the media deals with these things that happen to us in our community. And we want to see if you will help us to get a better view of these things. We have a live audience here as well, so people are going to get involved. Our callers are going to get involved, and we want to find out how you feel, especially if I can go to you, if I might, Ms. Scott, first. Of course, you're involved with editing, and you know about the media. Can you kind of give us an idea from your own perspective, maybe an overview of what you feel the media's role is in dealing with issues when a person is black and outspoken?
Well, I certainly think we have a responsibility to be truthful and accurate and report the story as adequate and accurate as possible. When you say outspoken blacks, you have to look at, I look in terms of what they have to say more so than their personalities or how outspoken they are.
Okay.
Because some people just like publicity. Some people thrive on publicity. So I think you have to analyze what they are saying and the issues involved and see how you want to present those issues. I think we have a responsibility to be accurate to our readers. We have a responsibility to be truthful, and we have a responsibility to not suppress news and information that is going to help our readership or help our communities.
Well, let me ask you, if I might, when you think about how the media deals with a lot of issues, for say, when a person is outspoken, is it a strategy sometimes, you think, rather than just being a point of reference to maybe focusing on somebody's outspokenness? Is it just a strategy maybe to get the kind of publicity that maybe somebody would want, would you say?
There are individuals that seek that type of publicity, and I would say they fall in that category, but there are also others that feel that's their ideology on what they have to say, and that's the way they want to present it, and the way they go about getting it shared in the community is to say something that's going to stimulate, I guess, a reaction, and they look for that type of reaction. I just, when you analyze issues, I just think that it's important that we look at what a person has to say. You don't have to necessarily insult or be rude or be intimidating to people to get your point over. You can have something to say, and it can be a very responsible message in what you have to say. And as a rule, the Atlanta World has always, I think, tried to bring balance in the news. We've always tried to be accurate and fair but we do look at issues to see if a person is just out there to get publicity or whether they really are trying to send a message of responsible information, and that's where I think you have to weigh your judgment on as an editor. Okay, we'll come back. I'm sure there's going to be some stimulation from that kind of comment. But we want to go to you, if I can, Yella, and see, you're an educator. You're right now a professor at Clark Atlanta University, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And in your experiences as far as being an educator, when you are involved with listening to maybe the news and how things are presented when it deals with African Americans, do you think that we're being dealt with fairly in the media?
No. I don't think our people, by the majority media in this country, will ever be dealt with fairly. That's not my opinion. I think when there are issues that are presented by the majority media in this country, the white-dominated media in this country, I think they tend to present things from their perspective. And I think there are certain issues, there are certain statements, since we're talking about black and outspoken, there are certain statements that may be made that they're going to present in a certain fashion. Now, and sometimes they have different reactions. Sometimes you can present someone who's black in the media in a certain fashion, and they may present them in a discriminatory type of way. For instance, Louis Farrakhan can be presented in a certain type of way, but I think what happens is oftentimes black folks see that and get angry, and it gives more support from Farrakhan than they might figure, the way they present him in the media. So I think that happens. I think oftentimes the media is used oftentimes by certain people to shape public opinion. And I would agree with Ms. Scott that oftentimes certain people utilize the media to make controversial statements. But for instance, the instance with the young man Abdul Rauf, that was in the media a couple of weeks, was in the news a couple of weeks ago, where he made a statement. He was sought out by the media. It wasn't anything that he was seeking to go and publicize.
Well, let me ask you about that particular incident. Do you think then, because of his position that he took, and not being favorable maybe to the broader society, do you think that that is what made it the limelight? Is that issue, that he took that position, more so than just who he was as an African American?
I think both. I think both. I think they can't be separated. I think one of my criticisms of what happened during that particular time was that there were no positions stated that might support what he had to say. All the statements were opposing what he was saying, or people who at least said, well, let's look at his right to say that, but we oppose what he said. I'll support your right to say that. But, if he said that an American flag represented tyranny and oppression, and I believe there are numbers of people inside this country who support that and could have spoke to that. But that point of view was not presented.
Well, we'll probably bring all this out again too. And after I get a chance to speak with Darryl on his views, just to start us off, I want to, let's jump in whenever you feel the need to, so that you don't have to feel like we got to go one-on-one anytime I point to it. But let's go. Darryl Lassiter, you're an independent TV and producer yourself.
Yeah.
So as a producer, what responsibilities do you think that the media has in projecting and giving right information in the broader community?
I think the media has the ultimate responsibility of, as Ms. Scott said, of reporting accurate news and not making it seem like there could be extra. And I come from not just film and TV, but radio and newspaper, because I write for Ms. Scott at the Daily World also. And I have seen over the last 13 years or so, for me being in TV and radio, is sometimes you could take a story, say like the Mike Tyson, that's a real recent story.
Right, okay.
Before we can find out the facts, it's almost like we've already just said he's guilty, he's going back to prison. I was in Chicago when that happened, and they were saying, people were saying, oh, he didn't learn anything from the last time. And I said to myself, well, how do you know he did it? So some of that is the media, some of that is perception, and as you were saying earlier, the media sometimes shape what we see as the image. It's stereotypes, books do that, some radios do that, stations do that, some newspapers do that, some television stations, and biggest of all, maybe movies and records do that, and particularly to our African-American men.
Can we, as common folk, in our communities, really understand the shrewd methodologies that's used in these mediums like records and televisions and things like that? Because I remember years ago reading a book by Wilson Bryan Key on subliminal seduction, the title of it was. And in the book, it just talked about the skillful maneuvering of how people are writing into ads and doing the things, flashing things across the screen so fast that the eyes don't see it, but the subconscious mind, they say, gets it. Can we as laymen fight against these kinds of forces in these kind of mediums that we know nothing about?
It's not easy because, it's so much information out there. But I think it's going to, in a way, we're going to find that, going on the internet and things like that is going to open up a whole lot of doors. It's like you open up a can of worms and you don't know where these worms are going to, reach. But you can never, that's why I think the black press is so important, because we have blacks that can be sensitive and can look beyond the surface to really analyze. And I think this is what we have got to develop as editors. We have to be analytical. We have to look beyond what we see as what appears to be the first comment or the first statement about an incident. For instance, with the young man that wouldn't stand for the national anthem. You may find controversy where some Muslims may agree, some Muslims may disagree. He being Muslim, I guess that was his right to say that's how he felt. But I think later, of course, he had a different response to it. But I'm just saying the black media will be one that will probably focus on that from a different perspective from the way the white media would have.
Okay, let me ask you, since you